Trump may finally get his great white whale. Harris versus Trump national margin. You mentioned that New York Times poll, a tie. That's actually right in the middle of the spectrum when we're talking about recent polling data. You don't have to look very far to find Donald Trump ahead nationally. He was up by 2 points in the CNBC poll, up by 3 in the Wall Street Journal poll. Very close races within the margin of error. But then the same thing on the other side, right? You have Harris up by 3 points according to Ipsos. The Say 24 YouGov poll, it's a bunch of academics, also has Harris up by 3. But the bottom line is, with the popular vote, which we really haven't focused upon, a very, very tight race, John. Fact is, Donald Trump is very much in a position he could win the popular vote, which of course is something he would absolutely love to do.
And would be something very different than we have seen compared to last time and the polling compared to last time.
Exactly right. So I went back through the time machine, all right? I went back through the time machine to see where were the past 2 races at this point in the campaign. Look, Harris in the average poll right now is up by 1. Well within the margin of error. You go back 4 years ago, Joe Biden was well ahead of Donald Trump in the national popular vote polls. He was up by 9. Even Hillary Clinton was up by 6 points. So now Donald Trump's in a position he really hasn't been before at this point in the campaign where he could truly compete, and we can truly say that the popular vote at this point is way too close to call. Of course, this is only going back 8 years. I wanted to jump even further back in my time machine to get an understanding. Hey, I haven't heard about a Republican potentially winning the popular vote in a while. And it turns out a Republican winning the popular vote, it hasn't happened since 2004 in George W. Bush defeating John Kerry. And that's only the one time that it has happened. In fact, you have to go all the way back to 1988 to find another one when it was George W. Bush's father, George H.W. Bush, winning the popular vote over Michael Dukakis. So the fact that the polls right now are so close, John, the fact that Donald Trump has a legitimate shot of winning the popular vote is something I think a lot of folks, including in my line of work, really didn't think could possibly happen when Donald Trump was running last time around. He could make history, not just for Donald Trump, for a Republican candidate as well.
Now, there are some reasons for this, and I think Democrats' heads are all exploding out there watching this right now. There are some reasons for this, which you're going to explain, but also begin to raise the possibility that we could see the reverse. We could see the reverse of things we've seen where a Republican wins the popular vote, but there's a chance for the Democrat to win the Electoral College.
Yeah, part of my job is to warn our viewers on either side of the aisle of an event that may occur that they don't necessarily like, and Donald Trump winning the popular vote could absolutely happen. You might as well wrap your minds around it now, folks, if you don't like Donald Trump. But on the flip side of that, a potentially good sign for Democrats is, why is Donald Trump doing so well in the popular vote polls? You can dig down into the state level polling and you can see that Donald Trump is doing particularly well in California, Florida, New York, and Texas. Of course, none of these states are really on the board at this point, so Donald Trump may end up gaining in the national popular vote polls, but actually is wasting votes, which could in fact lead to a case where Kamala Harris could sneak by in the Electoral College by sweeping those Great Lake Battleground states, which at this point are way too close to call, John.
That's right. It'd be interesting to see then if all that talk about Electoral College reform takes on a bit of a new light.
It may. In 2000, remember, folks thought that Al Gore would win the Electoral College and lose in the popular vote. It turns out they were all wrong.
Man, folks, you talk about CNN and Harry Enton being the political Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I mean, sometimes they're, pushing the Harris propaganda, and then every once in a while they drop a little nugget. They become Mr. Hyde. And they start talking about Donald Trump and his chances. So here they talk about the popular vote. And this is something I've been talking about for a long time. I thought from the very beginning that Trump had a shot for the popular vote. And folks, we're going to get to the poly market. We're going to get to my, prediction why I'm still at 345 to 193 for Harris. I'll show you the real clear polling map that I have. We'll give you some ideas in terms of why I think that way, in terms of what's happening out of Virginia, New Hampshire, Minnesota, little nuggets from various people out in the Twitterverse. And then we'll talk about some of the things happening in the political sphere as well. But I just wanted to put this video out there because here they're talking about the popular vote swing to Trump. And they were doing so good, Harry. You were doing so good. And then what do? You have to drop the little, Dr. Jekyll nugget into the picture and say, well, there is a possibility that Trump could win the popular vote, but he could lose the Electoral College. In what scenario, other than cheating, would that occur in those battleground states? Every single time that you guys have talked about this, this is the first time I've heard you actually saying that now that Donald Trump, you think that it has a shot at the popular vote. You've got to temper that with the opposite theory that you were basically talking about with Harris, that, you know what, if she's not up ahead by 4 or 5 points, she has no way to win the electoral. Well, what changed? So now the popular vote shifts towards Trump, and he might lose the electoral college? I mean, come on, CNN. We're not stupid, moronic idiots. God, you guys sometimes really have to understand. Do you look in a mirror? Do you watch your own shows afterwards, Harry, to just imagine basically just threw this thing out there? Makes absolutely no political sense whatsoever, unless, of course, shenanigans or rigging or other things are going on in those battleground states. All right. So I want to take you to Polymarket and see what's happening today, which is the 26th of October. Take a look at the Polymarkets, folks. So, folks, this morning we were actually at 63.9. And we hit 65 and it's fluctuating. So it's gone up almost about 8/10 of a point to 9/10 of a point, literally probably in about 4 hours. So here, right now, let's just call it, it's 65-35 for Donald Trump in the poly markets. Now, I want to take you to the Real Clear polling averages and give you an idea as to where I've been for months on this and where I'm still at, just to give you an overall picture of the map that I have in terms of my electoral college map. So take a look at this. So here you see it on my map, folks. It has not changed for months. For months. This is my prediction back then, 345 to 193. I was talking about Nevada going to Trump long before the polls came in this, only because I was taking a look at some of the polling data that was coming out early on. And yes, some of that was the stuff before Biden, dropped out of the picture. But that, to me, didn't change my mind at all. Just because Biden dropped out, if people were against Biden, why would they all of a sudden switch to Harris, especially with the Latino vote, which is exceedingly going in terms of Trump, and then the rural areas out there. So that was my interpretation of the data at that time. Nevada was going for Trump regardless. I also think New Mexico, it is falling within the margin of error, and I think New Mexico is going to flip. I think he's going to win that by 1 to 2 points. Then I'm saying Minnesota, the same thing. I think he's going to flip Minnesota. Again, a 1 to 3 point victory. If it's less than 1, I don't care. And here's the other thing, folks. I've got Minnesota. Wisconsin, I think, is going to be 5 points. I have a feeling it's going to be 5 points, somewhere between 3 to 5. Would I be surprised over 5? Absolutely not. Michigan. I think Michigan is going to surprise some people. Again, 5-point victory. You know what? I would be comfortable more in saying 3 to 5. But over 5, it wouldn't surprise me. Same thing in Pennsylvania. I think it's going to be an over 5-point victory, 3.5 to 5 points. I think Virginia is going to flip, folks. 1 to 3 points in favor of Trump. New Hampshire is going to flip. Another close one, but within 1 to 2 points. And I think Nebraska too. If this wave is there that we're saying all over the place, I think it's going to take any two out as well. And that's where I come up with my 345, because I've already given, like I said, Virginia is going to flip. I think it's going to be 1 to 3. It's within 2 to 3 points right now. You're seeing New York City. Biden was up. He had won New York by 23. There are polls that showing Kamala is 9 to 13. Trump's going to Salem, Virginia to do it. He's going to New Hampshire. He's going to Virginia. He's going to these places. Madison Square Garden is going to be rocking and rolling. In New York, going to bring those numbers down. She's up 9 to 13 in some polls. I don't think he has a shot at winning New York. I mean, if he wins New York, folks, okay, the election's over. But from 23-point plus margin of victory for Biden down to single digits, and that's 13 to 14-point drop, that is significant. Where is that wave going to head? You don't think that wave of New York is going to go to Pennsylvania? And then Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin are going to vote a little different. We already know North Carolina is in this thing. Georgia is for him. Florida, Texas, all these states are there. So that's where I'm coming up with my 345 to 193. Now, let's take a look and see what's happening on both sides of the universe, where we've got people and pollsters giving their prognostications, their punditry, and that's what gives me even more confidence in where my prediction is. Now, would I be upset if we just lose New Mexico, we just lose Minnesota? It's just not enough, It's less than one in New Hampshire, less than one in Virginia, less than one in New Mexico, less than one in Minnesota, any two. Folks, of course not. 270 plus, that's all we need. That's all we need. But it would be absolutely crushing victory, a mandate to have an electoral college landslide along with a popular vote victory. And right now, by my calculations, I think Trump is going to win it somewhere between 800,000 to 1.2 million in terms of the popular vote. Would I be surprised if it's larger? No. Would I be surprised if he just squeaked it out? No, but I'm saying my calculations from what I've seen in the data, 800,000 to 1.2. Okay, that's a 600,000 vote margin swing. But I mean, I'm confident in terms of where I've seen. Anyways, I'm putting myself out there because a lot of people out there playing it safe. They're not putting New Mexico in the column for Trump, or Minnesota, or Virginia, or New Hampshire, or second district, or Maine at large, or, Nebraska too. And they're sort of hedging their bets a little bit. I said, you know what? Go for the gusto. I could be wrong, but as far as him getting to 270, not wrong there. I don't think so. We're going to win the Electoral College. And I have a feeling, and I've been saying this all along, that the national popular vote, because if you take a look at all the margin of victories for Biden, they are down by half or even more in terms of the margin of victory. Where are those voters going to? Are they not going to vote anymore, or are they going in a different direction? Anyways, let's take a look at what some others are talking about in the political verse. Let's do that with this following slide. I'm going to do it right now. So this here's from the Virginia Project. Dems are finding out the hard way. There was a very good reason Harris was polling at 1% in the 2020 primary, where she didn't even receive a single vote, folks, when she first ran for president back in 2019. I took this into effect. I never believed the honeymoon hype. I never believed the popularity. Yes, there was a popularity push. They wanted to have, anybody would have done it. You think if they had Gavin Newsom in there, this wouldn't be happening? The same thing? Or Whitmer, or anybody else in the Democratic Party? Anybody in the Democratic Party would have attained, that same type of enthusiasm. Obviously, there was enthusiasm because now they knew that Biden, because of its incapacitation, was definitely on the verge of losing. This gave them a glimmer of hope, which put a bounce in the polls. But then what the pollsters did was basically extrapolate from that and give her even much more of a bounce for the honeymoon. And it was all relatively astroturfed and manufactured. There was a bump for her, but it wasn't the bump in terms of popularity, in terms of the overall picture that I believed. I still believe she was where she was at back in 2019, 2020, and even at Biden, which is what is giving me my reasoning and looking at the crosstabs and all the other data, that's out there. Now, take a look at this next slide. So here's a national poll by PO Strategies, POS, a Republican pollster, and then Hart Research, a Democrat, for CNBC. And Hart Research, folks, they have not been very favorable towards, Republican candidates or to Donald Trump at all. But take a look at this. Trump overall is up by 2 in the national poll. He's up by 1 in the Battleground States. Now, these are 1,000 registered voters. In the Battleground States, 586. This is through October 15 through the 19th. What does that have to say about things? Take a look at this next one. Another national poll by who? The Wall Street Journal. October 19 to the 22nd. Number of voters polled, 1,500. National poll, Trump up 3. Trump up 3. Let's take a look at Atlas Intel. Here's the Atlas Intel poll. Trump, 50.7. Harris, 47.6. Stein is just under 1%, and the rest, obviously, not even within the picture. Atlas Intel was the most, spot-on pollster back in 2020, 2022. And let's see what happens in 2024. But, you go on past historical data. You take a look at with Rasmussen, Trafalgar, insider advantage. But when you see a lot of the Democrats out there in the establishment, they basically are poo-pooing all these as just right-wing pollsters, right-wing propaganda, far-right pundits, far-right pollsters. They don't know what they're doing. They're in favor of, they don't look at the others. But these ones are usually very underfunded. They're done by individuals or smaller companies. Atlas Intel, I believe they're based in Brazil. They're not even an American polling company, but they do polling all around the world and world elections everywhere, besides just politics. And they have been very, very spot on in their polling, not only around the globe, but also in the United States of America. Now let's take a look at some other national polls. Take a look at this, folks. And folks, this is something that's been talked about a lot. CNBC, Trump +2, WSJ, the Wall Street Journal +3. And here's that we're talking about. She's got to be up +3 nationally to have a shot at the Electoral College. In other words, she's down 5 to 6 points. This is exactly my analysis when I was looking at the mathematics of all this. And I have always been thinking that Trump was always up +3, +4, and I was only giving him half of the thing where people have underestimated him, where in the polls, he's usually been underestimated between 4 to 8 points, either on the national level or an individual state level. So I didn't even take the 4. I even cut that 4 in half and said, give him 2. Give him 2. If he's up 3, 4, that means in my mind, he was always up +5, +6 nationally, which is exactly where they're coming out. There's nothing that's going to be able to move anything within a week or 10 days of 5 to 6 points overnight, let alone within just a couple of weeks, folks. Check this next slide out. Folks, this is just stunning. A new Battleground poll, Harris, X, and Forbes. Now, it's only 322 likely voters, so take this with a grain of salt, outlier. But if what I'm saying is true, that Trump is up 5 to 6, these guys are saying right now in the Battleground polls, he's up +8. +8. I have him +5, +6 nationally, if not more, but I'm right in that 5 to 6 ballpark range. And these guys are saying, okay, Harris and Forbes are talking about being 8 in the Battleground States. Take a look at this next slide, folks. The Nate Silver model now is basically saying that Trump is going to win every swing state. That's the most likely scenario. I mean, this is just absolutely, even Nate Silver, folks, who is notoriously left. You know what happened in the 2016 election? He's not a Trump supporter at all. Even his election model and his prediction model is talking about a complete sweep within the swing states. And let's take a look at what's happening with Gallup and what they've always said. Remember with Gallup? In 2008, Democrats, or those that lean party ID, party identification, Democrats +8. Obama, 7.2. Gallup was only off by 0.8. In 2012, Dems were +4. Obama, 3.9. Gallup was off by 0.1. 2016, Democrats were +3. Clinton, 2.1. They were off by 0.9, but obviously Trump won. 2020, Biden was up. Democrat identification lean was 5. Biden won by 4.5. So if Trump is up by 3, what does that mean, folks? If he's up, in terms of identification lean, it's Republicans this time, +3. That's what Gallup is saying. Republicans up +3 in party ID or lean towards being Republican. And Gallup has not been wrong. It's one of the best correlative factors of what's happening in terms of the final vote totals. Take a look at this next slide. So this here is from Michael Presser, Nevada this evening. Double the mail update from Washoe County. Current party turnout going in Clark County, Nevada. Republicans, 159,000. Democrats, 140,000. Others, 97,000. Clark County Republicans having a 5% turnout edge over their Democratic counterparts, keeping the raw vote margin unusually tight this close to Election Day. Republicans added 6,000 votes to their overall gain from yesterday. Rurals are doing their thing. Someone, he says, will win Washoe County with 49% of the vote. All eyes are still remaining on Clark County. This here's from Larry Schweikert. Arizona early voting returns. Republicans have a 53,600 lead. And he goes, by the way, for those worried about cannibalizing, Democrats' turnout so far is higher. In other words, they're 26.3% to Republicans' 24.8%. So he's saying Republicans still have much more gas left in the tank. They've got a 53,600 lead right now going into early voting lead, folks. Don't worry about the cannibalizing, Larry Schweikert is saying. Much more gas in the tank. Take a look at this next slide. This one's happening for Pennsylvania, folks. Republicans just crossed the 33% of the two-party early vote returns in Pennsylvania. They're closing in on 30% of all returned ballots. Now, Cliff Maloney, who's doing an unbelievable job called PA Chase, he says if his prediction holds, Pennsylvania is ours. Right now, Dems 60.1%, GOP nearly 30%, other 10%. Now, here's what he basically said. Cliff Maloney said that if Republicans earn 33% of the early party vote in Pennsylvania, Donald Trump would win this election. Currently, they're at 32.39% today, and that percentage continues to tick up each and every single day. So, folks, that's what I wanted to share with you today, give you an idea of what's going on in the various battleground states, give you an overall picture of what I think is happening in the Electoral College and the national popular vote. We appreciate you taking the time to watch. You've been watching the Dr. Nasser Shake Show. I've been your host. My name is Dr. Nasser. If you've been done so already, subscribe to the channel, like, share, and follow. You all know what to do. Take a look at our video links above and below. My final thought is always, when you're right, you're right, and when you're left, you're wrong. Until next time, folks, take care and stay safe.